Wow. That was... Oh, dear Lord. Hi, Internet. Welcome to Bookworm Reviews. I'm your host, the Bookworm. Okay, so this is the first book that I have no background on. No clue on the plot, author, genre, nothing. So to begin, this is a Christian fiction novel. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Christian fiction is a genre that incorporates Christian morals and beliefs into their stories. And most suck. Well, I haven't read any Christian fiction, but most people agree that it doesn't hold the strongest pedigree, usually being bogged down by forcing Christian values into their stories more than fleshing out the story. So you know what they were missing? Bigfoot. Yep. A Christian fiction novel with Bigfoot. Christian fiction with Bigfoot. Oh me, oh my. Sit back and relax as we go on to the hunt for Monster by Frank Perrietti.
He's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. Doesn't have a point of view. No.
The hunter, rifle in his hands, dug in a heel and came to a sudden halt on the game trail, motionless, nearly invisible in a thicket of serviceberry and crowded pines. He heard something. The first rays of the sun flamed over the ridge of the east, knifing through the pine boughs and morning haze in translucent wedges, backgliding tiny galaxies of swirling bugs. Soon the warmy air would float up the draw, and the pines would whisper like distant surf. But in the lull between the cool of night and the warmth of day, the air was still, the sounds distant. The hunter heard his own pulse. The scraping of branches against his camouflage sleeves were crisp and brilliant, the snapping of twigs under his books almost startling, and the eerie howl was clear enough to reach him for miles away, audible under the sound of the jays and between the chatters of a squirrel. He waited, not breathing, until he heard it again, a long, mournful, rising in pitch, and then holding that anguished note to the point of agony before trailing off. The hunter's brow crinkled under the bill of his cap. The howl was too deep for a wolf. A cougar never made a sound like that. A bear? Not to his knowledge. If it was his quarry, it was upset about something, and far ahead of him. Reed Shelton has planned a survival weekend for his wife, Beck, to help get her out of the house more. She is against it, but does it to make Reed happy. But something is off. When they arrive at the cabin, it is a wreck, with no sign of the guy around. They write it off as a bear attack, or a test by the survival guide, and camp the night on a hill close to the cabin. Then they hear the screams, like something out of a nightmare, like a woman screaming, followed by an awful smell. They are not alone, and are attacked. They run through the woods, but whatever is chasing them is faster and stronger. Beck then trips and falls down a waterfall and gets knocked down. Reed watches as his wife is taken away by the creature. The next day, he gets his police workers, and the search begins for the monster. Monster is a mixed bag. That's the short of it. But to see why, we would need to look into what worked and what didn't. First off, this is a really good thriller. Whenever the monster attacks, you have a true sense of dread that no matter what you do, this thing will get you. The first attack is a true edge on your seat read that kept me up all night to find out what happens next. A true page turner. We also have two great main leads. Before the attack, we see Reed as the outdoor-loving survivalist, and Beck as the shut-in. After the attack, we see Reed determined to find his wife, by having to walk on a tightrope, because if he says his wife was taken by Bigfoot, he would come off as crazy. Not to mention that ever-present fear that his wife is dead. For Beck, we see her live with Bigfoot. Yes, we follow Beck living with a family of Bigfoot. And it pretty much works. You may be wondering, why would a Bigfoot keep her alive? Well, that would lead to spoilers. But like all mysteries, there is more than meets the eye. As for the supporting cast, they are mixed. Some are great, like Captain Singh, who are best friends of Reed. They get a good amount of development and add a lot to the plot. But the rest can be classified as one note. Many used to move the characters to where the writer wants them to go. One example is when we spend half a chapter on a couple that get attacked by the creature and get away, only so they can report it and give Reed the clue of the direction the creature is moving. Never to be heard of again. It wouldn't be so bad, but it keeps happening over and over and over. Now let's confront the elephant in the room. What does Bigfoot have to do with Jesus? Or in more civil terms, what Christian message or moral does Monster present? Well, it's not much. Reed and Beck are Christians and meet at a church group. Beck has the whole, "Why is God doing this to me?" arc, and even names the Bigfoot family after a story in the Bible. Frank Perietti has talked about how he focuses on the story, while adding Christian morals to make people think. And there's nothing wrong with that. People are free to express themselves, and it's done in a non-offensive, in-your-face way. Overall, the Christian aspects are decent. I kept finding a problem with Darwinism. No. You are not. Blind devotion to a theory sometimes supplements real science. No, 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 no. You are a creationist! Ah! There's an anti-evolution message. There's an anti-evolution message in a Christian fiction novel with Bigfoot.
Of course!
Okay, not exactly on those terms, but when you realize what the twist of the book is, it leads to a confusing and rather lackluster ending. Now, I don't want to start a flame war over what people should believe, know, or anything like that. But for me, I don't believe in creationism in any way, shape, or form. It just divided me down the middle on the book. On one hand, I love the thriller story, but I hate the anti-evolution message. I want to love this, but I won't love that. I want, but I can't. You are tearing me apart, monster! What really killed it for me was what Frank Perietti said in the Q&A in the back. In Monster, whoa, there's a whole lot of different messages. My first idea was evolution. One of evolution's best kept secrets is that mutations don't work. They're not beneficial. I believe if I can just create a story that somehow addresses that one leg of evolution, I can get people thinking. I can't make a big scientific argument. I can just tell the story. One of the best ways to really combat the fortress of Darwinism is to allow people to wonder about it, to antiquate them with the controversy, so that they know there is one. Well, I too am not a scientist, and I believe in several Christian values. But to put it in civil terms,
Reginald, I disagree.
I may come back to Frank's work. From what I found, he seems to be one of the bigger names in the genre. And from the rest of the Q&A and his bibliography, he may provide some interesting material. let's wrap this up fast. For the genre review, I give it a 4 out of 10. Even though this is my first true Christian fiction thriller book, I didn't like the message the book tried to put on me. And if I have to read more of that, it doesn't give me incentive to continue. My personal review is 5 out of 10. It splits me right down the middle. Overall, I give Monster a 4 out of 10. Believe me when I say that when this book works, it works. But if you don't want to read issues of evolution, then I say give it a pass. That was exhausting. But not as exhausting as next week's book. Winter is coming. Till then, have a nice day.
Nowhere man, please listen. You don't know what you're missing. Nowhere man, the
But for me, I don't believe in creationism.